Hey, Jennifer, thanks for taking some time this morning to chat with me. Really excited to hear about you and your background and your career just generally. So, can you kind of walk us through your background and what got you to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do the quick version is I was an opera singer, believe it or not, in my 20s. And through operatic vocal training, I injured my voice. I was in New York City and had to get a couple surgeries. And it resulted in me really realizing that I wouldn't be able to have a career as a performing artist in that way. But I also kind of the door opened at that point to a different stage. And my friend said, I had a friend who used to be in the theater and said, "You'd really make a great facilitator. Have you thought about leadership development?" And I didn't know it was a thing. And I went and got a second master's degree in organizational change and leadership and just fell in love with that in a way that I didn't think I could ever love anything again as much as I loved music, but the opportunity to facilitate adults through, an evolution process of being better humans and better leaders is turns out that's I think what I'm meant to focus on. So I love that the redirection of life and, the fact that the pivots are there for us and if we just listen and have the courage to follow and not to kind of fight for the thing that wants to end and go confidently into the thing that wants to begin and wants to be birthed. I'm just so grateful for it. So, subsequently, I would hold some corporate roles, start my own company 20 years ago, build my team, work, across the Fortune 500, and consult to organizations then around strategies and training for building more inclusive workplaces. So that's what my team and I did, and I have soon to be 5 books, a podcast with almost 400 episodes. I've been at it for a long time. I kind of came to the work of inclusion very early, luckily. So I've been able to kind of ride this whole thing and have an incredible journey and build my knowledge and my wisdom for what's next.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I did not know you were an opera singer.
Yes,
That's pretty cool.
I was. Helps me
So,
with the keynoting. Helps a lot.
yeah, I bet. And obviously incredible career, 5 books, 400 podcast episode. That's pretty impressive. Can you tell us tactically like a little bit about your consulting and the business that you've grown over the last 20 years?
Yes. So I let's see, I was laid off from a corporate HR job before I started the company, and I realized I wanted to be an external. I wanted to be someone who was either independently employed or small firm. I didn't want to do the corporate thing. But interestingly, I understood corporate and I thought I clearly saw I can serve corporate. I can serve the leaders in that environment. And I think I can do that well. So I was a freelance trainer, a leadership trainer, and delivered hundreds of programs on all kinds of topics. And then I got this big client and I said, I'm just going to go for it. And I got my LLC and it was an incredible way to kind of start to get some revenue coming in, to do everything myself and stop being a subcontractor under other organizations. And I quickly figured out that I could hire people to co in instead of me. So when I started to grow it and scale it, and I think your audience will maybe relate to this if you've tried to do this, there's a way to, if you're smart about it and it's hard and you're a little bit lucky, you have enough money to hire that first person and hire that second person. And my first hires were other consultants to send into the clients so that I could continue marketing the firm. So I think of it as working on the business, not in the business, which is right from the E-Myth book, which you all should read if you're intrigued by these concepts of like, how do I get started? It's such a good book. But I really knew I wanted to grow it and I wanted to do this work with more people, more experts that knew more than I did and I could send in and they would do an incredible job. And I also knew I wanted to someday be a thought leader and not in the weeds of running the business. So my next hires after that were operations people, eventually heads of sales who could manage the pipeline. And again, all of this is elevating me and shifting me into the role that I really, really love, which is to be the evangelist for the ideas that we represent and then have the kind of work be done by folks that I ultimately would staff. And this is I'm saying all this. It's a luxury. It's very difficult to do. I took every dollar I could and gave it to other people and paid them well because I really believed that we were building something that was an end to end solution for clients. It's not just me as a keynoter talking about ideas, but it was the people who could actually do the work over the long term. So I was really, really proud of that. But it was very difficult to do.
I'm sure that was difficult, and obviously scaling in the way that you scaled, you're bringing on people you don't necessarily know they're going to deliver in the same way you would deliver. So I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this, have had these thoughts or may be struggling in the same, trying to get into the process. Do you have any tips and tricks or kind of like lessons learned from scaling to the size that you got to?
Yeah, you can't be a micromanager. You just can't. You have to have trust. And even if it's not the right hire, that's a trial and error. And I was not actually a particularly good hiring manager. Uh, so understanding your limitations and knowing that you have to take risks to build something. You've got to trust other people with your clients. You have to give feedback a lot and have an open relationship with someone to, lay out your expectations. But it's this interesting balance of like too tight of a hold on something and letting people really run and really find their way and find their voice and show what they're great at. So, it is a lot of experimentation. I think, if you're a visionary founder, likely you're probably not also the operator and the process person. And, really getting clear on what you don't do well is so important. And then even, we didn't have AI. We didn't have the help that people have now. So it's so different. I mean, I had to do the human being approach and it's expensive and unpredictable. But I think if you're considering scaling, start with what do I absolutely hate that takes me 3 times as long as somebody to do as it would for somebody else? Can I outsource that? And even just part-time, even just hourly, like begin to really think about, what do I not want to be doing? Because your time is invaluable. If you're in a founder position, you've got to be working from your zone of genius. I mean, that's what's going to encourage the growth of your firm. So just really be like ruthlessly aware of that, and then begin to kind of chip away at, depending on your resources, who can I surround myself with, and what kind of team do I need? I needed an entire team of operators because I'm like the whirling dervish of marketing and sales and content and writing books and, speaking all over the place. And I needed, an entire consulting teams run on great operations, plus a thought leader who's somebody that people trust, somebody that people read. So we had this, like, I think, combination that really worked. But maybe as you're listening to this, you're a technician, you are an operator founder, maybe you need a visionary. So maybe you're in a different place where that's really your strong suit and you need to pump up your thought leadership. I don't think firms like mine can exist without a strong thought leadership, like person slash point of view. It's what gets you noticed. It's what wins people over to your vision, your exciting vision for the future. And that's how sales happen. So I'd also really encourage every founder to invest in who am I as a thought leader, not just as a CEO, not just as a manager. And that might scare you, that might excite you, it might kick up a little imposter syndrome, like I could never be that. What do you mean? I'm going to have books someday. I'm going to be on big stages, but I think we all have to think that way because it cuts through the noise and really enables everything else you're going to build and put in place is enabled by that.
I'd love to kind of dig into the thought leadership piece a little bit more with you because quite clearly you've mastered that. To somebody who may have come up as like an operator or really understands like tactically how to deliver what needs to be delivered to their ideal client profile, but that person also knows they need to be the thought leader. What kind of advice do you give to them? What steps should they take to try to get to that point? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I know some of us just want to keep our heads down and do the work, right? And you're definitely not like when I say work on the business, not in the business. You're like, ooh, if that's true, I'm in the business. I love to kind of do the thing. But the gist of that is I think it's fine if you want to run a lifestyle business and you want to be the delivery person, the salesperson, like the everything, and it's fine. I mean, most people have businesses like that. Most people don't scale, but to get noticed and cut through the noise, and also just I mean, it's an amazing experience actually to be. I've enjoyed it. It's incredible to walk on a stage and have books that you wrote, that people read, that people value, and have a much bigger impact. And so while I love it and enjoy it and it's a fit, it may not feel like a fit for you, but I would argue you must have it for your business. And it can be, by the way, it can be a collective effort. It doesn't need to be just me, you, the brilliant one with the right thing at the right time. It can be a collective voice that you harness. It can be, I don't know, it can be an industry voice of experts in the industry, and you're the one that distills it. It doesn't have to be all on you as one person. I've kind of gone the one person route, but at the same time, my 400 episodes of my podcast, I always had guests, and I was always platforming them, and I was always deferring to them and their expertise and bringing them to my audience. So there are ways of doing this that don't feel like I'm sucking up all the oxygen in the room and I'm like fabricating things to say. Like that's never true. That's just a failure of imagination and also a failure of community because we're surrounded by brilliant people. The question is, how do you curate relevant conversations where, you are one of several voices that are inspirational to people and do have a unique take. So I believe everyone can be that. It's just the kind of the way, what you're comfortable with and the way that you get there. So I would say writing a book is so important to just lift your speaking fees. I mean, literally just speaking about like getting on stage, talking about your company, what you do, why it's important, your personal story, because you're probably a founder that has a very dynamic personal story, or maybe a story that you haven't really thought is useful. I mean, I still to this day, I get on stage and I tell the opera story of losing my voice. And I also come out as a member of the LGBTQ community. And in the first 5 minutes, the audience is like, what else is she going to tell us? Like, I've got them. I mean, I really got them. But that took a lot of work and crafting and courage in years ago to kind of get that story together and get on stage and get myself comfortable and feel that I'm starting right out of the gate with this authenticity that's powerful and that cements my credibility and allows me then to teach and share my models and talk about the book. So I would say a book is really important, and I wouldn't count out speaking because it's just one of those, it's like pound for pound hard to get, but pound for pound, like one of the most powerful marketing activities that you can do. And there's so much follow-up business and so many things you can then sell in if you do it this way. Versus I think like, working in the weeds and not being visible just means that you're constantly prospecting, you're constantly trying to get on people's calendars, you're pitching all the time, versus coming in from the top and being like positioning yourself as someone that pulls, you're not pushing, you're actually pulling an audience to you.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and that's a much more efficient energy than pushing, cold calling, buying lists. I don't think it works. I think people buy from people, and they buy from people they can feel and touch and hear from and understand and pick up something and read, and feel close to you, and feel that you're somebody that they can trust.
So I'd love to hear your like what happened. So you got your thought leadership platform, things started to take off. Did that mean you saw your marketing budget go down, your sales like did that facilitate,
Hmm.
everything on like this from the sales pipeline perspective? That's kind of what you indicated. People were coming to you instead of having to go hunt for people. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that? That's very interesting.
Yeah, I do think I've thought maybe it's a peculiar way that I sell because I'm not comfortable cold calling and buying lists. It just wasn't the way I wanted to go about it. I must have sensed it was inefficient, but I also, for me, I was like, hey, I can be actually good at this thought leadership thing because I'm very extroverted and I'm a performer. So it's easy, I have some things that make it a lot easier for me. So we generated pipeline because I wrote so much and I was really generous with my field. And I think this is another really important point I want to make, that when you act like a thought leader, it's not just in my definition, I'm the expert in the field. It is investing in the field, meaning you're writing useful resources for people who are practicing in the field. You become a hub for discovery and knowledge sharing, and you become a hub for people to share best practices and next practices and compare notes. And when I say hub, it can be everything from you moderating a panel at a conference and generating a conversation in the room that's really illuminating and people feel like they're part of a whole. And we all need to feel we're part of something these days more than ever. We're so isolated, we're working on our own. But, fields of practice are, whether it's cybersecurity or just name one, there are voices in each one of these fields that people go to. They trust them. They go them to them to learn. So the more you can invest in that field and become recognized as an expert that is generous in the field, I think the more goodwill you create, the more relationships you create. And that was honestly my very earliest days 20 years ago. I was writing white papers, I was doing research, whether it was paid for or not, I was doing it because that was how I built our marketing voice. And then it just drew people to us. Like they just wanted to be a part of it and they were very grateful. They were very grateful because my field was extremely it was a frontier 20 or 30 years ago. There was not a lot of us in it. There was not a lot written about it. Now there's a million books, but back then there wasn't. So when you also kind of have a sense of what aspect of our field is not being served right now, who's not being served, how can I move into that niche? How can I produce content in that niche that answers a need that people don't even know they have? And become an authority there. I think that behooves your sales process, right? All of that. And no, my marketing budget didn't go down because, we were
Yep.
marketing the consulting firm first, and then we were marketing the books and me as a speaker then and the firm. So honestly, we had lots to market when we were, a bigger team. But yeah, I've spent a lot on marketing and don't get me started on the cost of getting books written and all that. It's like,
Sure.
it's a
Yeah.
labor of love.
Very, very insightful though. I mean, that was a lot of good information packed into, I mean, you articulated that very well. On the tactical side of your business, like tools, systems, technology, like what are you guys using that works well? What are you using that, maybe you wish you had something a little bit better?
Yeah. Well, like all small companies, it's always this battle of the CRM, right? Always. I think we use Zoho for project management. I think we use Kit, which used to be ConvertKit for newsletters and managing all of our contacts. Obviously, we're on all the socials. We're heavy, heavy LinkedIn users. Obviously, we're also using lots of AI and everything that we possibly can, from slide design to the usual suspects. And I think beyond, I mean, I'm really interested in creating like a Gen bot. We've been trying to actually do that in the company we were working with, when they had to shift their focus from authors to healthcare because their investors were like, we need you to make money now. But we've been kind of going down these roads of like assisted learning for my readers. For example, they pick up a book by me and they have a companion that's informed with my knowledge and can be some resource for them that's immediate and, essentially an LLM of me. So there's that. There's also digital twins that are coming down the pikes very soon, where it's going to be actually me. I have so much to say. And I think one human, it's hard to generate the amount of content that we really need to, even for me. And I'm really prolific, let alone for people who struggle with stage presence, who struggle with like what their message is. So AI has made all this so much easier. I mean, really, I've been writing things by hand for 25 years, and it's not as necessary anymore. So a lot of the barriers that we have faced are removed now, and now our challenge, honestly, is not sounding like everyone else, making sure that we're still very clear on our wisdom, our unique wisdom. And I say wisdom intentionally because knowledge has been commoditized and knowledge is now available within 5 seconds.
Mhm.
So really the wisdom, I think, fits well into that thought leader piece, which is like, what is my wisdom? Like, what is my, legacy here? What do I really, really want to leave the world with from everything that I've experienced? And how am I packaging that up and giving it to like in five different platforms at once with StreamYard, for example. We always use StreamYard for LinkedIn Lives and it beams out in real time to 5 different platforms. Like there's really good stuff available right now for thought leaders. There's books have never been easier to write. I think there's tons of great hybrid publishers now. I wrote this latest book from my podcast and they took 100 episodes and distilled what the themes were, and it made my life a lot easier. So, yeah, I think it's a wonderland of tools. It's almost it's too many tools,
Yeah.
honestly.
That's yeah, that was very insightful. Obviously, AI is the big thing right now. Is that as far as like emerging trends, whether it's just in business or just in your industry specific, is like AI the big thing that is changing the game, or is there anything else? What are your thoughts on that?
As a speaker author, as a speaker, I mean, like I said, we could be in a brave new world very soon where I can send my avatar to go speak, for something, right? Um, and I certainly can use it to help me get the speech written. And the research process is so much easier. But the delivery, so far has to still be me. I have to be compelling. I have to show up and schmooze and, do all that, which luckily I enjoy. So I don't think it's yet has changed that field. I think it's actually human wisdom in the form of speakers and writers and content creators is going to be a premium.
Mhm.
Um, our interpretation of what AI tells us and how it's the latest is that 95% of AI implementations in companies have failed, right?
Yeah.
And it comes down to the humans, it comes down to our role in it. So I do think we have something that is really important to preserve and a voice that's really, really critical. As writers, it's interesting too. I think Amazon obviously will downgrade your book if it senses that there's too much AI in it. So they're realizing that, if they're getting a flood of AI assisted writing, it's also going to be able to be discerned that that's true.
Mhm.
And they don't want to sell junk. They don't want to sell stuff that's not going to sell because everyone's kind of getting hip to like the sound of it, the writing of it, the style of it. So I like that we're in this phase of holding it accountable and also holding each other accountable for something that's still high quality, still comes from a human, still is unique, but I say all that and I don't think any of us really know what the future of this is going to hold at all. So I don't know, does
No,
that answer your question?
yeah, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of interesting things there. I like your wisdom versus knowledge point there. That's something very interesting. I've had a lot of conversations recently where AI is just gonna become so much more prevalent that the human touch, like human interaction, is gonna become much. That's gonna feel a lot more white glove, you know.
Mm.
Whereas the AI is going to be kind of like the standard. So that's just, yeah, it's interesting that it seems like you're kind of seeing the same thing. When it comes to your clients or your thought leadership, how do you measure success?
That's a great question. Is it likes? Is it number of followers? Is it, amount of like traffic or interest or impressions? Is it book sales? Is it the number of inquiries that we get as a result of the thought leadership for speaking gigs or book talks? I think that we can't market in a vacuum. We constantly have to be paying attention to what resonates. And I think that honestly, thought leaders and great leaders, like they have a finger on the pulse. They understand the zeitgeist of the moment. And right now, I have my ear to the ground constantly. I am listening to podcasts like across the spectrum, tons of stuff about AI and social change and economics. And so I used to be when DEI was hot, I was one of the go-to voices. And as that has receded, not in importance, but in the focus, like in our sort of the public interest, if you will. And I've moved into talking about other things. We watch our response rates and number of comments and kind of how people are if they're resonating with something and they weren't before, you have to constantly be kind of experimenting. I think of it as throwing bait out as a fisher person. You fish with the bait that the fish wants, not the bait that you find delicious. Number one. But I think we're in this experimental, it's such a crazy time. I mean, we don't know what's going to resonate. We don't know. I think even those of us who used to be extremely confident about what resonates don't have a handle on it. And so we're trying a lot of things. We're just trying. And I think we're also trying to pivot, obviously, not into something that doesn't resonate, but something that's true for you too. Because I don't think you can do anything that we've talked about today without really believing in it, being passionate about, being interested in it,
Hmm.
finding it fascinating, finding it relevant. Like you shine a light on things as a leader because you believe, hey, look here, like this is so important for you to know. And I'm burning to tell you about it. That has to be the energy. I'm burning for you to read this book so that you can get something important. that has to be our energy to audiences. A, to cut through the noise, but also you, if you don't feel that way about what you're communicating, then you're never going to be able to stick with it for the long haul and keep feeding it. So, yeah, so I think that looking for resonance and noticing resonance, and however you want to define that. I mean, I know what it feels like. I know what it sounds like. I get the voicemails or the texts. I just listened to your podcast episode. I was crying. I loved it. It really made me think of this. It's so important. Keep going. When you get that, you say to yourself, I've hit on a nerve here. And it's one of many things I think are interesting and compelling, but maybe there's something here that I can really lean into. But again, I think this year has been a total kind of, there's such a lack of clarity. And I'm hoping 2026 has a very different energy. But if you're sitting here listening to this saying, I just can't seem to find the thing, you are not alone. I mean, everything is being restructured.
Yeah.
And I want to say one more thing. Let something die. If it was the old you, it can be very scary, but if you've been at something for a while and it's stale and you're tired and you feel like it's the only thing you know or you're known for or whatever, but something else wants to emerge, I would just really encourage you to welcome that. Invite that in and make some space for it, because we are in a year of experimentation, and we need to show up differently, more quickly, as the future unfolds, because the environment is changing so rapidly that I'm not sure any of us can really nail things down right now, even those of us who've been very, very good at that in the past.
Jennifer, that's great advice. Be prepared to pivot is kind of what I took from that. Where do you want to see yourself in your business in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I've been giving the same, roughly a similar kind of keynote for hundreds and hundreds of talks over the last, I'd say, 5 to 8 years, probably. Obviously, modified, customized, for the client, and but a similar, like sharing the model that's in my book and helping people kind of progress in their leadership journey. I expect, and I have several new keynotes that I'm developing. I have the new book that's coming out that's kind of a shift into studying the dynamics of change. So that's a pivot for me. And it is what's lighting me up right now. And luckily, it's lighting other people up too. And there's that kind of resonance that I was talking about. So new keynotes marketed differently. I'm thought of as in a different category. I really want to shift the brand from she's that kind of expert to she's an emerging expert in this area. And I want that to be a different area. So I am behind the scenes. My team and I are working on seeding through our content strategy, like a different conversation, so
Interesting.
that people begin to see me differently and think of me differently and think of me for different things. And then I think a business will underlie that, but I'm not clear whether it's going to be a B2B or B2C business or both. So traditionally I've been B2B corporate sales, like all the way, and that's a world I understand. But again, like I just said, I think it's so confusing right now. Like, what do corporate audiences want? Well, I know what the humans want in the organization. The question is, what will the companies pay for? Which is a very different question. So that latter question is the thing you really have to get a handle on. Humans are always going to need support. They're always going to be wanting to learn new things and be developed. But the commercial question is, what are companies doing with their human capital right now? In an age where trust is at an all-time low, where AI is encroaching on jobs, where people feel incredibly insecure, where they're being forced to come back to the office to justify, a system that they had nothing to do with creating, there's a lot of difficulty in that relationship right now. And I don't know, some days I don't even know if I want to serve that anymore, because it's the level of the behavior of companies is truly disheartening. And I fear that that's going to continue. So I might go a B2C route, which is where I invest in individuals and bring everything that I know. But I've never run a B2C business before. So, there's lots that have gone before me, lots that have that. And there's particular difficulties in a B2C business that I'm not looking forward to. But
If you could wave a magic wand and remove any obstacles, maybe to doing a B2C business, like
mm,
what would that
gosh,
be?
yeah. Like tomorrow, I'd like a whole infrastructure built of retreats and cohort learning and one on one coaching. And I'd like something that's somehow scalable, because I think, if you hit a nerve with people, you run out of bandwidth really fast. Like, there's just no way. you can have one-on-one time like all day long. I mean, I decided long ago against becoming a therapist and a psychologist and having a private practice, but it was something I was called by for sure. But I just was like, gosh, like 8 hours of one-on-ones, like, oh, it's just hard. So if there were, and this is another area that's emerging, B2C models that work, I think that the question mark is, what are people able to pay for? What would they show up for? Do they want to be in real life? Will they hustle to get on a plane to go somewhere, to be together, for their own development? What happens to the economic model of that when people's jobs are in question? How are
Right.
they able to invest in themselves? Like, what does that look like? So it's not, to me, I never worry about what to teach. Like that never worries me. It's really the structure of it and the bandwidth for it and the pricing model that makes sense, that is meeting people where they're at, and then it's kind of the logistics of gathering people to learn together. I mean, I think we can all agree, like, we must do this, and we must do it in community, and we must, all of us, build spaces for this learning to happen because of what we were talking about earlier, the value of human wisdom. How are we going to pivot from being knowledge-based workers to wisdom-based workers?
Mhm.
How will we who's gonna build the container to do this? And I'd love to do it, but I think I get bogged down in, the dynamism of that, even that space. People who used to have, like, huge retreats and this and that, like, they can't even make it work anymore in the same way. So I don't know. I don't exactly know.
Again, I really like the term, pivoting from knowledge-based workers to wisdom-based workers. I really love that, and obviously wish you a ton of success in figuring out that next path. If you had any advice for, like, say somebody maybe in business school or somebody in corporate America who might be thinking about starting their own either consulting or coaching practice, like, what advice would you give those folks?
Yeah, it's never too early to start really, like, harvesting both your knowledge and your wisdom, and I'm, again, like, continuing on this differentiation here. But at any age, I think, to be really clear about, if I were out on my own tomorrow and I can't rely on this paycheck anymore and I can't rely on this job description that has given me my identity for so long, what would I be teaching? What would I be convening people to talk about? What is my point of view? And not downplaying that, not discounting it with imposter syndrome. Don't kill the little, the sprig that's trying to, pop up from the soil before it has a chance to really grow into something that, you can't even imagine. I mean, I didn't start this journey knowing I would be a best-selling author or give as many talks as I've been given and receive so much appreciation as I've received. Like, I I don't know if I knew that that was ahead for me, but I tried to be true and authentic as I went, and generous, as we talked about, and meet people where they're at and serve the clients as best we could. And that just sort of emerged. But what I would love to kind of reverse in my journey was that I wish I'd understood that sooner. I just wish that I think I waited a very long time to begin to write books, to begin to put myself on stage, because I wanted to feel 150% ready. And there is no such thing. We don't have any time to waste. We need all the wisdom of all people at all ages to find its way to the world.
Right.
And our
Yep.
job, I think, is to do that. That's what we're here to do. We have to work for the man or the system or whatever. Unfortunately, our capitalist economy is set up in this way, but it doesn't need to define you. And you should be working before you really need to hang out your shingle or whatever, which probably a lot of us will have to do. You should be preparing and be thinking of yourself differently as someone that will have that life someday. What will that feel like? What will I be? You just asked me what's ahead. Not, to be able to answer that and be able to envision. I often have my coachees write a future bio for themselves. And if they have a hard time, have AI do it.
I like that. Yeah.
Right? And just read it and be like, "Whoa, I could be that person. That could be me." And just seeing it is so powerful, and saying it out loud maybe, and even sharing it with other people and beginning to use it. It's like fake it till you make it. Like, we
Mhm.
have to kind of shape shift and throw ourselves into our own future to imagine who we can be. And luckily, we have all these beautiful tools that will write about us in this way that is breathtaking. That we're like, could I be that? And could I ever, is that available to me? And the answer is yes, it is. It absolutely is. But I think we have a challenge of positive visioning, like our imagination about an appreciation for who we are and how important we are is is not as front of mind and is not as much of a universal conversation amongst us as it should be. We need to be preparing to be able to make our own way, because I just don't know how the systems are going to support us and whether they're going to feel it as their responsibility to. But who is going to support you is communities and other humans and yourself. And
Yeah,
it's time.
great. Jennifer, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. If anybody's interested in
Cool.
looking up you or your company, like what's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah. If you would check us out, I'm on all the things. I'm on Substack. So Jennifer Brown Speaks on Instagram. You'll find me on LinkedIn, everywhere. Please follow us and get involved in our conversations. My books are widely available. The new one is called The Shape of Change. So that will be out in December, maybe January. We're not sure yet. But shoot us an email, info@jenniferbrownspeaks.com, if I can speak for your organization. If you want to do a book club, we have like a whole kind of guide to do that. But I would just, say to your listeners, bring me into your world and like, let's see what's possible. And, I'd love to meet any of you and help support your voice in the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.